Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Hey, Wes, you got a second?
Well, sure, Craig. What's up?
Did you speak to Mr. Jones about that cash liquidation? I thought that was all lined up, but he's coming from Mutual of Nairobi to Tony Walker Financial, and it's a little confusing.
Yeah, I did. We should be good to go. I discussed all the particulars with him, and then I think we're just moving forward with Tony's recommendations.
I thought everything was in good order on that one until Mr. Jones and I got on the phone with that rep from Mutual of Nairobi. I was so confused by the end, I don't think either of us knew what we were supposed to do.
Well, in those situations, I just do what Tony's always told me to do.
Well, what's that?
Just keep it simple.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the WorryFree Retirement, with your host, nationally recognized retirement specialist and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Well, welcome, folks, to the Worry-Free Retirement. And yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest, retirement planning specialist and fiduciary, Tony Walker. And before we get into today's show, let me introduce to you two lads in the studios here who are keeping things simple, Mr. Aaron Orander and Mr. Derek Hudson. Okay, we got something to talk about today, and you may have noticed from the introduction about keeping things simple, and this involves a concept I have never heard of called Occam's razor. And to help us understand this concept, Mr. Trey Juergens, fellow fiduciary, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. And we were outlining the show. We always like to talk about keeping things simple. Where in the world did you hear about this?
This was actually in church. The pastor came up. He was talking about keeping things simple, not overcomplicating things. Keeping things simple, Occam's razor does just that.
And there was different dates of birth on this fella. He was back in the 1200s or 1300s, but it sounds like I love the premise, and basically he was saying if you had two choices, one simple, one complicated, you should probably just err on the side of simple. Is that really what he's saying there?
Exactly. So in philosophy, a razor is just that. It's a concept that can shave off other possibilities. So with Occam's razor, it's a concept that just says if a simpler solution can be had, that's probably the right solution.
Oh, I think this guy would enjoy hanging out.
I think so.
He might have been a fiduciary here at Tony Walker Financial if he lived long enough. So I think what we decided to do, especially in our practice, we work with savers, folks, and savers love simplicity. And I've often said, I think the financial world sometimes makes this intentionally complicated. Would you kind of agree with that, and how frustrated many savers come to us and say, I don't understand what they're doing?
No, absolutely. I think when the financial world speaks over the head and confuses people, gets it to a point where it's overly complex, they feel like they rely on the financial world. So if the saver can't simplify it, they have to trust somebody.
Yeah, they're kind of almost bought into it, hook, line, and sinker. They don't have any options. So, and really retirement planning, folks, it's just that, options. We try to boil down to a few simple options, put the saver in control so then they can choose what they think is in their best interest.
Exactly right.
So we got a little bit of time here, Trey. I kind of wanted to go through the paperwork here. You did a great job on outlining this. We're going to go through, looks like 3, 4, about 6, we could have probably listed 10, but 6 things that we can do to follow Occam's razor, assuming Occam was helping us with retirement planning and to keep things simple. Derek's got the graphics here. The first one, boy, this is becoming more and more prevalent. And I think people, when we bring this up, think we're being greedy, get everything under one roof, consolidate your assets, but speak to why this is so important in retirement versus having everything scattered all over God's creation.
Yeah. Well, as Mr. Moore used to often say, a soggy mess. We've had a few cases, and it's great that we can help them, but when they bring in stacks of statements and contracts, things that they've had accumulated over 25 years, they don't even know what they have or where it is. And much less if someone were to pass away and leave that to the kids, if they haven't helped consolidate accounts and have kind of a clear idea of what they have, where it is, and communicate that to their beneficiaries, they really are in a mess.
Yeah, we met with some clients the other day, new prospective clients. They're not our clients, and they wanted us to handle everything. The father of these children and his wife is still alive, passed away unexpectedly. And yeah, they said, we don't know where anything is. And it's taken us several weeks. We're still not there. We're getting there. But But I mean, it has really been difficult. All right, number 2, I like this one. This is in our bailiwick. We call it mailbox money.
Mailbox money.
But building a foundation around guaranteed income, I know we've done shows on this. Put up an article recently, Aaron, that, I mean, the financial world's finally realizing you've got to have guaranteed income. Annuities are the only thing that can do that. But speak to that in terms of our game plan and how confident our clients are knowing that they're not going to run out of money.
Well, when someone comes to us and they're looking for a lifetime of income, and we can guarantee that with an annuity product, but also provide them flexibility on the front end with Charles Schwab, it's really kind of the sweet spot. So they really enjoy that guaranteed income. We had a recent article that said savers sometimes spend up to 2 times as much when they know they have guaranteed income. So basically, having guaranteed income is really a must for savers.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Here's the next one, limiting exposure to market risk. As we record this show in August of 2024, the stock market's going great guns. But folks, you got to remember, retirement's a whole different ball of wax, unless you want to plan on going back to work if we have another crash. So speak to how we try to temper back that risk when people are actually in retirement.
Yeah, we had a new client come on. Her 401k had done 25% here the last 12 months, which is great. However, having that much equity exposure heading into retirement is pretty scary.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Here's a good one. Choosing low-cost investment options. Basically, our Charles Schwab platform, but also, and I might do a whiteboard on this at some point in the near future, also, when you couple the annuities, many of our annuities do not charge fees. So speak to that, Trey. The typical person that might come in with a managed account from a broker, maybe they're charging 1.2, 1.5, $500,000. But what we can do to the fees to lower those and put more money back in their pockets.
Sure, with 0.8% annualized fee in Schwab, that's already pretty low. But we do carve out some assets to go into annuities without fees. So overall, you could be more like 0.5% on the whole thing versus charging 1.5% with a money manager.
In fact, we did this, put this up full screen here, and you can see where, in this example, our overall fees for this client, they vary, but for this client was 0.5% versus their current advisor was charging 1.5%. Now, again, in this example, we're just showing the effects of fees. Over 20 years, they'd have about $200,000 more in their account by just simply lowering their fees.
Oh, it's powerful.
Let's keep moving here. Oh, I like this. Simplifying estate planning. First of all, folks, we're not attorneys. We don't pretend to be, but I've been doing this a long time. All I can say is this. I mean, there's a lot of people out there peddling trust, pushing trusts. I think in some cases they have merits, but all I can say is a trust doesn't mean you're necessarily going to simplify your estate.
Yeah, we always update beneficiaries, and we're pretty proactive about getting power of attorney on file and just keeping those beneficiaries updated, because anything that you have with named beneficiaries with us avoids probate already.
And also, too, I would say if you're going to get a trust, that's fine, but make sure you've really thought through why are you getting the trust. A lot of people say, should I have a trust? And I'll say, well, why are you getting it? Some people might say, well, I want to save on taxes. Well, in some cases, the trust they're looking at won't save on taxes. Or I want to have privacy in my estate. I don't want to go through probate. Well, other than a house, maybe they're not even going to go through probate. So again, folks, we're not attorneys, but we can really help you think through first before you go to the attorney, what is it you're trying to accomplish? I think we got time for one more here, Trey. I like this one. Focusing on core values and goals. How much would you say, how important is it for a saver to trust the person they're working with? And what do clients sometimes share with us the reason they go with us in the first place?
Well, you listen. I think that's number one. When I first started and watching you in those first appointments, the little check boxes, the notes that you take, and then you present the findings of that second appointment, people light up because they see, oh, he was actually listening. And it's refreshing for savers, but it's also how we can do what we do. We can lay a plan out that actually achieves those goals and those values that they share with us in that first appointment.
And I like how you said it on a show a couple of weeks ago. Really listening, taking care of the client, doing what they ask you to do is the ultimate sign of respect for that client.
It is.
Well, thanks again for your time, Trey. I've got to get back here to a few more segments. Aaron and I got some things we got to work on, but you make it a good day, and thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Having worked in the retirement planning field for 40 years, I know it's not just about how much money you've saved for retirement, but making sure you one day don't run out of money. That's where mailbox money comes in.
Mailbox money.
a reliable lifelong income, much like the pension plans from the past. If you're interested in turning your 401k into mailbox money, let's talk. Just set up your free 10-minute phone call with myself at TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
One of the big things that Tony likes to pride himself on is service and follow-up for our clients, and that is income plan audits. It's a new process that we have put in place. So the income plan software that is exclusive to Tony Walker Financial, we follow that. We make sure our clients stay on plan. We follow up with when they're supposed to start income. If they get off track, then we contact them to see what we can do to resolve any issues they may have. And we've got 2 staff actually that are almost fully dedicated to doing that for us. And it's really going well. And that's how we can stay on top of our over 3,000 clients' plans at this point.
Our client spotlight today shines brightly on Miss Kim DeFazio. And Miss DeFazio, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. And I'd like to, first of all, just tell the audience briefly, what did you do for a living prior to your retirement?
Prior to my retirement, I worked for the Federal Railroad Administration. I was a rail integrity specialist, and then I retired at the end of January 2023.
That's awesome. Remind me, how did you find out about Tony Walker Financial? Do you remember?
Well, I had a financial advisor prior to your team, and I wasn't happy with some of the fees that they were charging me. And I was talking to my family member, and we just happened to talk, and he said, "Have you ever heard of Tony Walker Financial?" And I said, "Yes, I have." And he said, "Well, you know, I'm one of his clients." So he said, "I would encourage you to call Tony and talk with him." And that's what I did.
Oh, thank you very much. So your experience thus far, you've been with us a couple of years, but now that you're retired, tell us about the audience, about the experience you've had with the staff and our ability to respond to your needs.
Tony, I mean, it's hands down. If I have a question or I have a concern, all I need to do is call that phone number. Everyone is ready to help out with whatever. And it's prompt. I mean, it's prompt service. It's not like I wait 2 weeks or a week and then somebody gets back with me. So I like that customer service feel.
Well, Mr. Fazio, we appreciate your business so much and look forward to many years to come. So thank you.
You're welcome, Tony. Thank you.
And you're welcome as well.
Looking for an advisor you can trust? Schedule your free phone call with Tony at TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call 1-877-499-9255.
One of the problems for savers and planning for retirement is this notion of how much money will I really need in retirement to be worry-free. And first of all, let me say this is different for different people. I've been doing this now over 40 years. I've met with over 20,000 savers. I meet with 20 to 30 savers a week. It's all different for different people. There really is no one-size-fits-all, but there are several things that I'd like to have people consider when they're thinking about the future, because let's face it, you've never been into retirement. I get to bring my experience to bear in working with thousands of people and watching their retirement play out. And here's a couple of problems that people have in thinking through this. First of all, they've been led to believe that as they get older due to inflation, they're going to need more and more money. And that usually is not the case. In fact, although inflation is real, we'll see this in a minute, most people spend less and less. The second thing I've seen that's a real problem is at some point, too much money, listen carefully, too much money will create too much worry, and that is totally unnecessary. Think about it. I mean, how much money is really enough to live on? So let's kind of take a look at the 3 halves of life. This is really important to consider, and if you're meeting with somebody like me that's a retirement planning specialist, this experience I'm bringing to bear is not just looking at today and calculating all these numbers with these retirement calculators. Folks, you can't do that. Those are not realistic. You have to have a game plan first, work with an experienced retirement planning specialist and a firm that understands what I'm about to show you, called the 3 halves of life, okay? So in this first half, again, we generally don't work with people here in the first half of life. That would be people generally younger than age 50 in most cases. Those are people that are still trying to accumulate wealth, they're trying to pay off some debt, send their kids to school. They're doing retirement planning, but they're not really ready for our expertise and services. Again, where we come to the fray is when we're helping people transition from work to retirement, or if they're very close to making that transition. That transition is what we call halftime. Now, this is the period of time where actually most people neglect to spend and enjoy some of their money. This is where a lot of the fear comes in from the financial world. This is generally, not always, but this is generally between about 58 and 70 years of age, okay? 58 to 70 roughly. It's different for different people. But this is the period of time that people start slowing down. They realize work is getting tough. Maybe they've had some illnesses. They've had some friends pass away. They're going to more funerals than there are weddings. They're like, wait a minute, I need to start enjoying this money. But they're afraid to spend it because the financial world does not want you taking this away from them. That's how they make money on your money, folks. They don't want you to spend this money. So a lot of people don't spend it, and then the assets just keep growing. Well, what we're encouraging our clients to consider is once you pass this threshold, whether it's late 60s, early 70s, but basically you'll know when you hit it. I call it the second half of life. This is that period of time where you really do start slowing down. You're traveling less, maybe an illness or an injury or a loss of a spouse has kind of kept you from spending and enjoying money. You don't feel like spending a lot of money. You don't need to spend a lot of money. And you realize you're thinking, man, I spent all my life saving all this money. Now what? I got all this money. So this is the period of time when I think you should just relax. And yes, the idea is, this is what is counterintuitive for most people in the financial world. They don't understand. We actually want the asset base to gradually go down, not go up. If it keeps going up, all that means is when you die, you're going to have taxes probably passed on to your kids. Nursing homes are going to be after it. It makes no sense to keep stockpiling this money. So if you'd like to go through an analysis of your situation and incorporate the 3 halves of life, this proprietary take on money that I created years ago, and see how we at Tony Walker are so different from the rest of the financial world in wanting you to enjoy this money before it's too late, do this right now. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Click on that Let's Get Started button. We can set up something called the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call. Absolutely free, no obligation. You and I will be talking by phone, and if it warrants, we will meet in person to go through a free analysis of your situation. Again, it's TonyWalkerFinancial.com, or give us a call anytime at 877-499-9255. Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a pension buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no obligation appointment. Let us help you today.
In the office today with me is Beth Wisman, our onboarding specialist. Beth, you and I kind of tag team, really. I typically will follow up with clients to see if they're ready to move forward with the plan we've presented, or potential clients. And I tell them that Beth will be in touch with them to complete the onboarding process. Why don't you describe exactly what you do and what type of information you do need from the clients at that point?
So at that point, I will give the clients a phone call, reach out to them, get all their personal information, their date of birth, social, any beneficiary information, gather statements that we might need, voided checks, power of attorney, any additional documentation that we might need to be able to open the account and facilitate the onboarding process.
Okay, so really you're gathering the information that's needed for applications, any kind of rollovers or transfers that we need,
Correct.
Things of that nature. Okay. Is there anything that clients have, that they typically need to prepare for prior to their call with you? What specific beneficiary information and
Probably
things like
beneficiary information, date of birth, phone numbers, full name, middle initial. Sometimes clients are lacking those details and need to follow up later with that.
Okay, great. And often I know that I've seen emails from you that you do send them a safe and secure way to upload documents to us. Kind of describe that process. How does that work?
Correct. So usually after the phone call, I'll let them know that I'm going to follow up with an email to list the documentation that we do need, and then provide them that secure link to send it back.
Okay. So they just open the link, upload the documents, and
Correct.
send it back, and it's all encrypted and safe?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Beth, for being in today. Appreciate
Good.
all the work you do.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Looking for an advisor you can trust? Schedule your free phone call with Tony at TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call 1-877-499-9255.
Did you realize that if you have more than $250,000 in retirement assets, the government could tax as much as 40% of it when you go to take it out? And with current tax rates set to expire in 2025, the taxes you will owe on your 401k could climb even higher. Don't wait until 2025 to see how much Uncle Sam will take of your money. Get a game plan by logging on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Looking to roll over your 401k? Then log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and learn just how easy it is to roll over and safeguard your 401k. Do it today. The theme of today's show is based on the theory of Occam's razor, whereby it is believed that when faced with two challenging decisions, it is often best to choose from the simplest of the two, which for me, as a saver who likes to keep things simple, makes complete sense. Assuming Occam's razor makes sense to you as well, the real question, why wouldn't everyone wish to choose the simplest solution to life's most difficult problems, so one can quickly move on to bigger and better things? My own theory as to why we humans tend to overcomplicate things and avoiding selecting the simplest option is due to the fear of making a mistake. The result of overcomplicating our decisions in search of perfection, we sometimes, we do nothing. You see, deep down, none of us enjoys making mistakes. That's because we tend to think we are perfectionists, and given enough time, we'll always make the right choice. Our sincere desire for perfection then leads to doing nothing as we overanalyze our decisions and fail to act, and thus waste time and lose out on the joys of choosing the simplest course of action so we can move on with life. Interesting, in the first book I published back in 2005 entitled Perfecting Your Walk in Retirement was a book which attempted to share with savers the 10 steps to a worry-free retirement, as it reminded savers that this journey to a worry-free retirement would not be based on which financial products you chose, but rather on the process that you would use to select them and how to best enjoy retirement. Yet, much to my surprise, most savers were totally confused by this notion of retirement being a journey and that life is a process of perfecting your walk in it. So I did the next best thing. I chose a title that was simpler to understand and replaced this book title with this one, that's right, The Worry-Free Retirement. A title which quickly resonated with savers who were interested in the services of Tony Walker Financial, as we offered our proprietary 5-step process so that we could provide these savers with a roadmap for their personal journey in retirement. Oh, speaking of this notion of perfection and our desire to constantly be perfect, the Bible speaks to this all the time, but not as to how we in our own can be perfect, but with the help of God, how we already are. Check it out in Colossians 1:28, where God's Word says that by placing our faith and trust in the finished work of Jesus Christ, we are now in God's eyes perfect in Christ. This idea that we who are imperfect are now seen as perfect simply by the act of one man's sacrifice is hard to fathom at best, especially when we realize how many imperfect decisions we have made in the past and continue to make in the future. But by faith, as the next verse reminds us, our journey to perfection is already completed in the eyes of our Father, who is gracious enough to reveal them to us one day in the future. This stumbling and bumbling journey of perfection by fallen man is actually known as sanctification, which simply put is the process of seeing ourselves as becoming more and more perfect, not because of what we've done, but because of what He's done. As Hebrews 12:2 reminds us that Jesus is the author, and note this, perfecter of our faith. Notice also in 1 Corinthians 13:12, it describes this concept of sanctification this way. It's kind of like looking in a foggy mirror and barely seeing ourselves. Yet over time, we begin to see ourselves more and more clearly, and then confirm that it is God who has always seen us perfectly. It's a perfect faith provided by a perfect God. And Hebrews 12:23 affirms this, as the writer says, we are made perfect. This, my friend, is the process of sanctification. Funny, the first time I ever heard this word sanctification, outside the church walls anyway, was during 11 straight years of when I hosted something called the Mayor's Prayer Breakfast. One of my jobs during this breakfast each year was to find a speaker for the event. This particular year, we had a gentleman by the name of Nimrod McNair. And during the morning of the breakfast, as I watched Mr. McNair greet the attendees, I overheard one of them ask Mr. McNair how he was doing, to which Mr. McNair responded this way, "Better than I was yesterday." The attendee, with a look of concern on his face, responded, "Well, I hope you're doing better today." To which Mr. McNair confidently explained, "I am. It's called sanctification." So how do we humans deal with the knowledge that simple is better and that perfect should not always be our standard in this life? Well, in his book, Selling the Invisible, author Harry Beckwith concludes the following: "Don't let perfect ruin good." I could not agree more, as I've personally taken this advice by implementing this very good standard for myself and staff at Tony Walker Financial. This new standard of replacing perfect with very good has allowed us to continually serve the needs of more and more savers and do it in a manner that our clients love. And while I believe that the desire for perfection is a wonderful idea, in most cases, it is simply unrealistic to assume we can always be perfect in our decisions and what we choose to do about them. And maybe that's the problem with this old world today. We who are imperfect are trying to be perfect, and worse yet, expect perfection of others, when all along it is just not realistic to do so. That's because, as we just read in the Bible, without faith in God and faith in the completed work of Jesus Christ, nobody's perfect. And I mean nobody. So friend, the next time you are stuck over-analyzing a decision in life and making things way too complicated than they should be, forget perfect and simply turn your life over to very good instead. It's been my experience that keeping things simple and striving for very good is in most cases good enough. And that, my friend, is some perfect news you and I can take to the bank. Amen? Well, speaking of keeping things simple and settling for very good, how's it going when it comes to your retirement and who you are trusting to see you across the finish line? At this point in the retirement game, do you feel truly confident in your plans for retirement? And do you feel that you've got somebody in your corner who is handling all the details that it'll take for you to be worry-free in retirement? Well, if that's how you're feeling right now, maybe not so confident after all, why not do this? Get a second opinion from someone who has literally orchestrated more than 5,000 written game plans and has learned through our proprietary software how to make this stuff real simple. And we made this easy to check us out. We call it the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call. So to take advantage of talking with me, Tony Walker, the owner of the company, just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com. You're going to click on that little Let's Get Started button, and we will arrange that phone call. Internet not your thing? No problem. Call us 24/7 at the toll-free number 1-877-499-9255. Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. We've enjoyed being with you, but you remember, between now and next week, if all else fails, you be worry-free and you make it a good one.